Hey, real estate investors. Today, we're going to talk about raising rents. Should you? Hey, real estate investors. Raising rents is one of those things that is a should you raise the rents or should you not? Because they're a great tenant and you don't want to have them leave because you're raising the rents. Well, one of the things that I like to do in my rental units is raise the rents. And now this may become as a biased situation, and there may be situations where you don't want to raise the rents, but in general, it's an investment property. You have appreciation, you have just everything that goes along with it, you want to raise the rents. So I'm going to use an example. One of my life examples, I bought a 6-unit back in I think it was 2012. The total rents collected on that property was $2,600. So we bought the property, and it cash flowed well. It did really well, but we continued to raise the rents every year. Now, the reason I like to raise the rents, and where we're at with that unit at 2,200, or excuse me, at 2,600 a month, we raised that, and we are now sitting at about 3,400 a month. And we've raised the rents since 2012 to market value. So they were clearly undervalued. And now we have, in those years and in that time frame, we have increased the value. Increasing the value of that property 10 times. And so I've increased the value of that property just because we raised rents. Have we had turnover? Sure. But in that area, in that market, you're going to have some turnover. And it hasn't been a ton of turnover, but it has been some. But we were able to increase the rents. And the reason we did it was we had a clean property. We did some upgrades to the property. We did some things to the property that are just really good. And then we raised the rents. And the reason we got the rents raised, and I don't like to see this. This is what happens, or this is what I see with some investors, new investors. Maybe they've been in the market for a while and they kind of see this, but they get a tenant, they purchase the property, they get to raise the market's rent. Let's just say they even got market rents when they first purchased the property. They say, I'm not raising the rent because this tenant is excellent. They're taking care of the property. They're doing everything right. It's great. So I don't want to chase them off by raising the rents. And what we found is that's not always the case. So let's say 5 years down the road, you look at your property and you're like, man, it's doing okay, but the property isn't doing that great because I haven't raised the rents. And you're like, well, it's been 5 years. They've been there 5 years. I should be able to raise the rents, to market value now. And you look at the market value and all the rents have increased to $100 more than what you're getting on your property. Even the worst case scenarios is you have investors that's been sitting and hasn't raised the rents for 20 years. Those are good opportunities to buy and get that property appreciated and get some value out of that property. But that's beside the point. And so they raise the rent $50 to $100 on that rent. And that, because the tenant became accustomed to not having any rent increases, they want to leave. And so they leave because of the giant increase. What we found, on average, with our portfolio, we see about 2.5 years usually is the time a tenant will stay at a property. That's on average across the board for our properties. And one of the things we've noticed is we like to raise the rents 2% every year. 2 to 4%, excuse me. So what we try to do is get the tenant to sign a new 1-year lease. If they sign a new 1-year lease, we raise that 2%. So 2% of let's say the rent's $1,000, you're only raising it $20. So if you have a smaller apartment that's less, $500, you're only raising it $10. Most tenants aren't, and most people, I'm not going to complain, $10 rent increase, so what? But what you're doing is you're continuing to create value for your property. That's an extra $120 a year for you as an investor. And so what you want to look at a property is continue to raise the rent. Now, if they don't want to sign a new 1-year lease, we will increase it 4% to give them an incentive. Now, it's not to punish, it's to give an incentive to sign that 1-year lease, because ultimately that's what we want. We want them to stay. We want them to stay as long as possible, but we also want to keep up with inflation and keep up with the markets. And so we don't want to lose the value of our property. So by increasing the rents, by increasing the value of properties, you want to increase the rents. You want to, because at this point now, with that property, 5 years into this, and owning that property, that thing cash flows like crazy. That is one of our best producing assets that we have. Now, not all of ours are like that, but a lot of them are. And so what we want to try to do is always continue to raise that rents, and not big jumps, because yes, big jumps, yeah. Somebody raises my rent $50 to $100, whoa, I'm moving out. I'm going to find somewhere where it's a little different. But you raise that $10, $20 a month, somebody's not going to grumble about that. Yeah, fine, whatever. It's only $10, it's only $20, not a big deal. So, should you raise the rents? I would. You want to keep up with the market, you want to keep up with inflation, you want to keep up with the economy, and continue to make that property better, especially if you bought that property and you have a 30-year rate lock mortgage on that thing. For 30 years, that thing's going to stay the same, but if you're increasing the rent over that time frame, give that a couple years, and man, if you continue to raise that rent on that property, that thing's going to do extremely well for you. So hopefully this is helpful, but my recommendation is raise the rents. Keep on investing.